You know, have you ever really stopped and thought about why we as humans have this deep-seated need to celebrate? I mean, from the most ancient harvest festivals all the way to the holidays we circle on our calendars today, there's this powerful, just universal urge to come together and mark these special times. Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into the profound philosophies behind our most sacred celebrations.
So let's just start with the most basic question. What even is a holiday? Is it really just a day off work? A simple vacation? A nice break from the daily grind? Well, the sources we're looking at suggest it's so much more than that. These days are woven into the very fabric of who we are, into our history and our culture, and they serve a purpose that goes way deeper than just kicking back and relaxing.
And that's because, at its core, this desire to celebrate, to find meaning, to mark the passage of time, it's just a fundamental part of being human. Philosophers like Hegel have pointed out that humans are pretty unique in our capacity for religion and ritual. This religious sense, this innate need for celebration, it's as fundamental to us as our ability to think and reason. To really get this, we've got to go back, way back to the beginning. Our journey is going to start with the most ancient roots of celebration, and we'll trace how we went from celebrating something like the harvest to celebrating holiness itself.
And what's so fascinating here is just how practical it all was at the start. I mean, early human societies literally lived and died by the seasons, so their celebrations weren't some abstract idea, they were a direct, joyful reaction to the cycles of nature that kept them alive, the fertility of the land, the growth of their crops, and of course that profound relief of a successful harvest.
So, these early festivals, they popped up right alongside these huge human innovations. As we got into agriculture, we suddenly needed calendars to track when to plant and when to harvest. And that, of course, naturally led to celebrations marking the changing seasons and honoring the forces of nature that we were so dependent on. A great example is how pre-Islamic Arabs celebrated Nowruz in the spring and Muharram in the autumn, both tied directly to these vital, life-giving cycles. Okay, so from here, we start to see this really interesting evolution in the whole idea of celebration. It starts to move beyond just marking the cycles of nature to commemorating historical events and a people's special relationship with the divine. And you can see this so powerfully in the Jewish calendar.
A really key concept to understand here is Yom Tov. It literally translates to a good day. And this isn't just a casual term. It designates a truly sacred festival day when all ordinary work is forbidden. This elevates the holiday from just a get-together to a holy time, something set apart from the everyday.
So what happens here is the entire year becomes a cycle of remembrance. Jewish holidays aren't just about celebrating seasons anymore. They're about reliving the foundational moments of the faith. Passover is all about the celebration of freedom from slavery. Shavuot commemorates receiving the law at Mount Sinai. Yom Kippur is for spiritual cleansing and atonement, and Sukkot is about remembering divine protection out in the wilderness. The calendar itself becomes this living, breathing testament to history and faith.
Now, Christianity also builds its calendar around key events, but with this really unique focus on the life of one single central figure, Jesus Christ.
This is what's known as the liturgical year. And what it does is it organizes the entire calendar into a series of seasons that basically walk believers through the story of Jesus' life, from his birth all the way to his resurrection and beyond. It really transforms the year into an annual spiritual journey.
It kicks off with Christmas, celebrating his birth. Then it moves through Lent, a period of fasting and preparation, which leads right into Holy Week and the crucifixion. And then comes Easter, the absolute pinnacle, celebrating the resurrection from the dead, which is followed by Pentecost, marking the birth of the church. The calendar essentially becomes a biography, told over and over again, year after year.
And if you put them side by side, this comparison really highlights how these ideas evolve. Passover is this incredibly powerful story of liberation from physical slavery in Egypt. Easter, which, not coincidentally, happens around the same time of year, kind of reframes that theme as a spiritual liberation, a victory over sin and death through the resurrection. But you see, both are, at their heart, incredible stories of freedom.
All right, next we're going to look at a completely different but just as powerful philosophy for why we celebrate. In Islam, the major holidays, the Eids, they aren't primarily tied to seasons or even historical events. Nope, they celebrate something else entirely. The absolute key to understanding Eid is that the celebration comes after a major spiritual undertaking. So first, you have to complete a really demanding act of worship, like the month-long fast of Ramadan or the Hajj pilgrimage. And this whole act represents a victory of your spiritual will over your physical desires. So, the joy of Eid, then, is the joy of that achievement. It's a celebration of human potential, of a successful devotion to God. The writer Mustafa Salek al-Rafi just nails it with this quote. Eid in Islam is the festival of the worshipping idea. Think about that. It's a celebration not of something that happened in the past, but of a spiritual concept that you have just successfully put into practice. The joy comes directly from the struggle and the triumph.
So, wow. We've journeyed from celebrating the harvest, to remembering history, to commemorating a life, and now to celebrating a personal spiritual victory. After seeing all this incredible diversity, what's the common thread? What ties all of these celebrations together? Well, it turns out that across all these traditions, holidays are serving the same fundamental human needs. They reinforce who we are as a community, a sense of belonging. They strengthen our bonds with family and our friends. They force us to just pause and reflect on what's truly important. They give us hope and a sense of continuity. And, in a world that can feel pretty chaotic, they serve as this powerful resistance against meaninglessness.
And that really brings us to our final question. As we look at our own lives, at the holidays we celebrate today, often in a much more secular world, have they just become days off work? Or do they still hold that power to connect us, to our history, to our community, and to the deepest parts of our shared human experience? And that's the question we're going to leave you with.